Hello aspirants, taking a look at editorials in the Hindu newspaper for 3rd October 2016. The first editorial is No Shortcuts in Maharashtra. Now this is related to the rallies which Marathas are undertaking all over Maharashtra presently. The trigger for this is of course the rape and murder of a 14-year-old girl in Ahmednagar district, and all three accused in the case are Dalits. Now the demands which these Maratha rallies are making, the two major demands of these are, one is reservation for Marathas, and they are demanding 16% reservation, which was already there given to the Marathas in 2014 through an ordinance by the then ruling government in Maharashtra, that was NCP Congress government. And this ordinance was challenged in the Bombay High Court, and Bombay High Court scrapped it. So the 16% reservation was scrapped for the Marathas. The ordinance presently has lapsed. Another important significant part was that Muslims were also given reservation through that same ordinance. So it was 16% for Marathas and 5% for Muslims. When the Bombay High Court scrapped the reservation for Marathas, it upheld the reservation for Muslims in education sector. So reservation is given majorly for two aspects. One is for education and another is for government jobs. So reservation in education for Muslims only was upheld by the Bombay High Court, and everything else was scrapped. So this ordinance, actually the present government too, they let it lapse. They did not take it further. So of course now there is no reservation neither for Muslims nor Marathas in either in education nor in government jobs. So now these rallies are demanding reservation, 16% reservation. Also presently there are news that Muslims are also joining in these rallies now, demanding that same reservation for them again to 5%. Of course this is judicially controversial. The reason being that judiciary does not allow reservation on the basis of only economic criteria. And what the Marathas are saying is that they are economically weaker sections. They are a dominant caste. Marathas is an upper caste. They are prominent in politics in Maharashtra too. So politically also they are dominant, but economical distress is the main factor which is pinching them. Presently the agrarian crisis has also affected the Marathas all over Maharashtra a lot. So those are the reasons, major reasons, and the solution which they see is in reservation. The second demand which they are making is much more controversial. This demand is for abolition of the SCs and STs Prevention of Atrocities Act. Now this is an act which provides protections to SCs and STs against abuses. So if anybody commits any offense against an SC and ST, the punishment for that is much more stringent. So to safeguard them because of the historical atrocities committed against them. So now taking the cue from this present case also, they're demanding that they should not be given any more protection and the act should be scrapped. So of course that is a demand in Maharashtra. So let's see what goes ahead with this. The editorial basically discusses that what is the abolition of SC/ST Act of course is not called for, because there are crimes committed by some Dalits too, but the fact still remains that SCs and STs are looked down upon and their conditions is still not as required. So this protection is still required. Then the other aspect about the reservation, the editorial says that rather than giving them reservations, they should be given assistance. Agrarian distress should be minimized and more jobs should be created for them so that they find better avenues for themselves rather than taking this shortcut of reservations. Reservations, we are seeing demands being made by other upper castes too, like Jats, Patidars. We have seen such demands and rallies in the country presently too. So this is the first editorial. This is about the reservation which was provided to them and the ordinance finally lapsing. The next editorial is on OPEC's role of the dice. OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, is a cartel. A cartel basically means all manufacturers or producers coming together. So all oil producing countries have come together and they have formed a cartel. So they will decide how much production should be there. So based on supply in the market, the prices will be determined. So prices and production is determined by them. So they manage the supply demand in the market. Now these oil producing companies have been affected due to shale gas production and national production in USA. So these OPEC is majorly dominated by Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Venezuela, Gabon, a country in Africa, are the major countries in this OPEC cartel. So what the shale gas production in USA, as it affected oil demand, what Saudi Arabia did was, the policy which it took up was produce as much oil as they can. So they were allowed to have free hand. As much oil can be produced should be produced. So the market was flooded with oil, and then as a result of it, the prices went down. The Saudi Arabian government felt that we'll be able to sustain ourselves in this, because what will happen is, if oil prices go down, then shale gas demand reduces and there'll be no market for shale gas. So they wanted to beat this competition from USA, which was emerging now because they had developed new technology to procure shale gas. Shale is actually a form of rock. If you have studied geography, you must have seen sedimentary rocks. Shale. These shales lock in natural gas, and this natural gas, once compressed, move out and get accumulated as oil and natural gas. There is some natural gas still present in the shales. So that is what is called the shale gas presently, and a new technology to extract this shale gas has been developed, which USA is working on, and it is able to produce a lot of shale gas these days. Even in India, efforts are going on to increase the production of shale gas. So because of this, they wanted to beat this market, end this market. So since it's a new technology, it will be costly. So making it so costly that people go for oil, which is much more cheaper. But the techniques of Saudi Arabia did not succeed. USA was able to sustain. Shale gas has flourished, whereas oil market has been affected to such an extent that when oil was $103 a barrel in August 2014, presently it has come to about less than half, that is around 45 dollars a barrel. So that is the effect which it has had on Saudi Arabian government. This is the first time in 10 years that Saudi Arabian government is asking for a loan. It has taken $10 billion loan, 5-year period loan. So that is how much they have been affected. They have reduced the salaries of top government servants also. So this is the editorial discussing that. Now presently what is in news is that OPEC has now decided to limit their production. So per day, not more than 7 lakh barrels should be produced. Now here also, again within the OPEC cartel, the problem is that Saudi Arabia and Iran are always on loggerheads. As Saudi Arabia Sunni dominated, Iran Shia dominated, they always are having issues amongst themselves. So they are traditional enemies. So the problem now is that whatever is decided, Iran is not ready to come on board. So Saudi Arabia presently has even given many concessions to Iran. So they have all agreed. Whether they adhere to it or not is another matter, because the editorial says there have been incidences in the past that OPEC does not adhere to what they decide in the cartel. So that will affect the future of the entire oil producing countries. So these are the two editorials. You can see the oil production of the countries in OPEC, right? And this is shale gas, which I talked of, which is formed in the shales. Fine. The next what we look at is at the question bank. There's also this map given which shows assessed estimates of shale gas, which is present in various countries. You can see it's there in India, near Gujarat as well. Yeah, so next going to question bank. The question bank for 3rd October. There are two questions which we have picked up. So in the Hindu newspaper, you have two editorials, and then there is the lead article and 3 other articles. So this question bank is based on these remaining 4 articles. So sometimes the lead article may be significant, so a question would be put up, and there may be a case that the lead article is a repetition or not very relevant. Then a question on other articles in the perspective page will be put up. So the question bank for today, this is on bilateral India-Pakistan relations. The question is, India and Pakistan have fought several wars in the past. What were the outcomes of these wars? How can terrorism emanating from Pakistani soil and attacking India be countered? So this is in present context that the question has been framed. So talking about the India-Pakistan war too, India has fought 5 wars, out of which 4 were with Pakistan. First one was immediately after independence during Nehru's time on the Jammu and Kashmir issue. Second one was during Prime Minister Shastri's time in 1965, just after the 1962 Indochina War. And the third one was during Indira Gandhi's time, that was what resulted in liberation of Bangladesh in 1971. So these were the three wars, and finally the fourth war was the Kargil War in 1999 during the time of Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Now all these wars have not resulted in much gains. That is what has been discussed, and all these wars, it also says, had not been formally declared except the war during Indira Gandhi's time, 1970, when it was 1971, when it was declared because Pakistan Air Force had launched attacks on Indian airbase, so they had declared a war. That was what the Indira Gandhi government said, and we entered into the war. So these have been the wars. What is the article is trying to say is that the outcomes of these wars were not significant, because what we gained was not much. The first war, because that is the Jammu and Kashmir issue war, because of interference of Lord Mountbatten, we had to stop the war in between internationally. International means United Nations was involved, and a ceasefire had to be brought in. Otherwise, we would have easily made the Pakistani Pathan tribesmen who had entered into Jammu and Kashmir back to their places, and we would have had whole of Jammu and Kashmir under us. But because of international intervention, it did not take place. So we were the losers basically. In the second war, the war ended with the Tashkent Declaration, again in which the Prime Minister of India gave many concessions. The Pakistani forces pulled back to pre-conflict locations. So eventually, no profit, no loss. In the third war also, Shimla Agreement, which was signed between Indira Gandhi and Bhutto, again in that also, what was the prisoners of war, Pakistani soldiers, were given back. So again, eventually, Bangladesh was formed. Of course, that is one initiative which we took, and Bangladesh will remain our friend for how long is again questionable, is what the article also says. So these have been the cases. We have not gained much. Even in the fourth war, again Kargil war, soldiers lost their lives. So no profit, no loss. Eventually there was no success. So even after the Kargil war, the issues do not subside. They still continue to haunt us. So that's what the thing is, that what this editorial wants to say is, how do we avoid, because that is the other part of the question, that how do we avoid terrorism emanating from Pakistani soil entering into India. So what is required is that our intelligence should get strong. NIA, National Investigation Agency, NADGRID, all these have to be strengthened. The border patrolling has to be strengthened. And all those aspects, insecurity and intelligence aspects, have to be made strong so that such an attack does not take place in the future. This lead article concludes beautifully. It says, soldiers are trained to fight and are ready to die fighting, and they will fight if a war comes. And we will, as we must, honor them. But while they do their duty by war, we must do ours by peace. So negotiations, talks are much more important than fighting wars, is what the conclusion is. The next question is on, discuss the pros and cons of holding elections to parliament and state legislatures in India simultaneously. Is this a practical idea for India? Clearly state your stand with justification. Now this has been promoted, simultaneous elections have been promoted even by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and other ministers in the present government, because they say it results in a permanent campaign mode. So government does not have time to prepare policies and has to pay attention to campaigning. So this has been a recommendation by Law Commission in 1999. A parliamentary standing committee has also recommended. It also said that there can be two times when state legislature elections can be held. One when the Lok Sabha elections start, and one during midterm of Lok Sabha. So that the elections are well timed. So all the time should not be the case that election is going on in some state or the other. So all the resources are allotted for that. So of course it's costly to hold elections simultaneously, result in less cost. It will result in wastage of expenditure and resources, like teachers being employed, that would be reduced. And of course there are problems with it too, because the voter behavior is affected by it. If there are simultaneous elections in both center and state, then people generally vote for the same party. So local views or objectives will not be accomplished. That is the aspect. And foremost is how to alter this dilemma. The dilemma is that if the government loses its majority in the house, the government falls, and if there are elections required, then how should that be done? This is not the case in countries like USA, where legislature and executive are separate.